Today we dive deep into Volume 21 Chapter 1 of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime and explore the beginning of Shion's ultimate awakening of Susanoo, a transformation that marks one of the most important turning points in the series. The chapter opens with Tempest thrown into chaos after Rimuru mysteriously vanishes, leaving his subordinates without their leader or any clear answers. With communication cut off and Rimuru's fate unknown, the forces of Tempest are forced to act on their own, carrying the weight of his absence, while preparing for a battle that threatens the world itself. The focus soon shifts to the suspended world, a strange battlefield where time has completely stopped. In this frozen dimension, movement, magic, and even thought are heavily restricted, trapping powerful fighters in a state where resistance feels nearly impossible. For most, this realm represents absolute defeat. But for Shion, it becomes the catalyst for something far greater. As one of Rimuru's most loyal and emotional followers, Shion is hit especially hard by the situation. Watching her allies struggle while being unable to move freely, she is pushed to the edge both physically and mentally. Unlike others, Shion refuses to accept helplessness. Her grief, rage, and desperation begin to tear at the rules of the suspended world itself. Rather than overpowering it through strength, she instinctively adapts, beginning to move despite time being frozen. This moment is critical as it signals a shift not just in her body, but in her very existence. With Rimuru gone, the restraints placed on her power weaken, allowing the potential buried within her unique skill cook to surface. Her emotional collapse becomes the trigger for evolution, driven by a need to protect Tempest at any cost. That is when Shion awakens Susanoo, an ultimate skill known as Susanoo, Lord of Tyranny. This power fundamentally changes how Shion fights. At its core is Minus Break, an ability that allows her to cancel, absorb, and convert incoming energy into her own strength. Rather than simply blocking attacks, Shion can now turn an enemy's power against them, reshaping it into raw destructive force. While Susanoo does not make her invincible, it elevates her into a completely new tier of existence, capable of challenging threats that once dwarfed her entirely. This awakening marks the true beginning of Shion's transformation, both as a warrior and as a pillar of Tempest. But her awakening of Susanoo, Lord of Tyranny, doesn't end the battle, it marks the true beginning of it. Within the suspended world, Shion finally stands on equal footing, able to move, think, and fight freely while time itself remains frozen. For the first time, Dagruel is forced to acknowledge her presence, not as a mere subordinate of Rimuru, but as a legitimate combatant who has stepped into the realm of ultimate skills. With Susanoo fully awakened, Shion begins actively countering Dagruel's overwhelming attacks, nullifying destructive force through Minus Break, absorbing his power, and converting it into her own strength. Attacks that once would have erased her now fuel her movements, allowing her to press forward with relentless aggression. However, this clash quickly proves that raw power alone is not enough. Dagruel is not simply a powerful enemy, he is a being born of pure force, whose existence itself overwhelms the battlefield. Even as Shion adapts, Dagruel continues to push her back through sheer output, testing the limits of Susanoo's energy absorption. Every exchange drains her reserves, and it becomes clear that while Susanoo allows Shion to challenge an impossible foe, it does not grant infinite stamina. The fight becomes a battle of endurance, precision, and willpower, rather than brute strength alone. As the conflict escalates, the nature of the suspended world itself begins to shift. Other powerful figures, including Veldora, observe the fight closely, choosing not to interfere directly. This decision carries weight. Shion's struggle is not something to be interrupted. It is a trial she must overcome on her own, a moment that will determine whether her awakening is truly complete. Around them, the frozen battlefield begins to destabilize, and when the flow of time starts to return, the situation becomes even more dangerous. With normal physics restored, Dagruel regains access to his full destructive capability, unleashing attacks far more devastating than anything Shion faced while time was stopped. Despite this, Shion refuses to retreat. Even as her body reaches its limits, her resolve hardens. She continues to fight not because victory is guaranteed, but because surrender is unthinkable. This portion of the battle makes one truth clear. Susanoo is not a shortcut to dominance, it is a power born from resolve. one that demands constant sacrifice to wield. Shion's awakening has elevated her into a new class of existence, but it has also placed her in a position where every second of battle risks total collapse. The battlefield stands on the brink of catastrophe. Shion remains standing, Susanoo roaring within her, but the outcome of the fight is still uncertain. Dagruel has yet to fall, and the true cost of Shion's awakening has only begun to reveal itself. As time begins to thaw and the suspended world collapses around them, Shion's battle with Dagruel reaches its most intense point. The moment when time resumes marks a turning point, an instant Dagruel has been waiting for. Within the suspended world, their conflicting abilities had kept them in a kind of equilibrium. Shion's Susanoo could nullify and absorb attacks, while Dagruel's overwhelming, destructive force was restrained by the world's frozen laws. But once normal physics returns, that balance breaks. Dagruel's full might, the power that had been sealed up, becomes unleashed. And with it he launches an earth-shaking assault that shakes the very ground beneath Shion's feet. Dagruel's attack is a brutal combination of raw energy, atmospheric distortion, and seismic force. Lightning crackles, the air roars, and tremors ripple outward, every element of natural chaos deployed at once. This onslaught is not just an attack, it's an all-out attempt to end Shion's life. In contrast to earlier, when Susanoo could nullify attacks that operated under the rigid restrictions of the suspended world, here the incoming assault carries the full weight of cause and effect, physics and energy, making it vastly more complex and dangerous to defend against. Although Susanoo remains a monumental power, capable of interacting with opponent force in ways few others can, this onslaught pushes it beyond the limits where simple nullification is enough. This moment exposes a fundamental truth. Susanoo is incredibly powerful, but it is not unlimited. It thrives at absorbing energy, stealing strength, and turning attacks into opportunities, but when confronted with pure, unrestrained force, its defenses begin to strain. Dagruel's confidence isn't arrogance, it's born from absolute certainty. He knows that once time resumed, everything changed. His energy advantage, a difference in magnitude far beyond what the suspended world could equalize, gives him the edge. Despite the overwhelming attack, Shion's spirit does not break. Even when Susanoo's thresholds are tested, she continues to stand and fight, driven not by a desire for personal glory, but by an unyielding will to protect everything she believes in. It's not just a battle of power, it is a clash of convictions. Shion's drive to defend Tempest and her allies forces her to adapt her strategy beyond raw absorption, blending offense and defense with ever-shifting tactics as Dagruel's assault continues. This critical moment cements Shion's growth and the reality of Susanoo as a skill that evolves with its user. It shows that even an ultimate skill has its limits, that power without strategy can falter, and that battles of this scale are not won by strength alone. As the fight with Dagruel reaches its boiling point, everything hangs by a thread, and the moment of truth finally arrives. Even though Susanoo allowed Shion to go toe-to-toe with a being as powerful as Dagruel, the clash had been an unrelenting ordeal, pushing her beyond every limit she ever knew. Dagruel, the embodiment of devastation, and a being whose power once defied the laws of physics themselves, continued to attack relentlessly with overwhelming force even after time resumed. Attacks meant to erase her very existence rained down with lethal intent. But Shion's resolve did not waver. Instead of merely defending, she chose to take the offensive. In a bold and desperate decision, Shion abandoned defense entirely and poured all her remaining magicule and will into a single decisive strike, a technique later known as true chaotic fate. Rather than trying to nullify every blow with Susanoo's minus break, she transformed her energy into an offensive surge of power that cut through Dagruel's defenses and landed inside his body, inflicting pain he hadn't felt in millennia and knocking him to his knees. Dagruel's reaction says it all: the astonishment. Not because he was defeated easily, but because anyone had managed to strike him so effectively at all. The truth was that Shion didn't overpower him through sheer raw power. She shattered expectations with her unshakable conviction, precision, and the raw spiritual force behind her attack, forced to acknowledge that she wasn't simply reacting to his strikes, but actively reshaping the battle. Dagruel was stunned as his dominance faltered. At this moment, Susanoo wasn't just a defensive shell or a counterattack tool. It became the foundation for a real finishing blow that disrupted his internal stability in a way he had not anticipated. What makes this clash truly legendary is not just the raw numbers. Dagruel's magical power and destructive capability were astronomical, but how Shion managed to bridge that gap. Her evolution was not just literal but symbolic. A warrior who once fought at Rimuru's side now stands as a being capable of shaking a primordial force to its core. Even Dagruel's respect for fighters grew as he witnessed her boldness. And in that confrontation, he recognized her not as a mere subordinate of Tempest, but as a worthy adversary in her own right. But even as Dagruel faltered, this moment did not mark a reckless annihilation. Instead, it became a testament to Shion's heart and determination. Her victory wasn't born from blind aggression, but from forging her own path in the void, embracing both her strength and her vulnerabilities, and breaking through the final wall between defeat and triumph. With Dagruel shaken and the suspended world's influence dissipating, Shion's true chaotic fate delivered the world its first glimpse of what Susanoo is truly capable of, not just as a defensive power, but as a force capable of shaking the foundations of even the most fearsome foes.
Rest. The battle is decided. Find peace.
Like and subscribe for more. And leave a comment telling me what you think about the video. I'll be waiting.